Welcome back. Sam and Jade, Compare Recruitment Factoring, Recruitment Funding 10. Today we've got Tom O'Dowd from Aldermore Bank. I'll let him introduce himself. Enjoy. Tom, cheers for joining us. Recruitment Funding 10 from Aldermore. I'll let you introduce yourself. Give us a minute and a half on you, I guess your IF background, and a little bit of background in Aldermore, if you can.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so I work as a BDM at Aldermore. I've been with the bank about 5 years, 100% externally focused in the intermediary market. Before that, I was with RBS for around 10 years, originally part of the Eurosales finance business, for those people that remember that name.
Yeah.
And started out reconciliation, credit control, and then did all sorts of relationship management roles. In the end, fancied making a move into sales. So
how long ago was that? So how long did you do in invoice finance before you jumped into sales?
Yeah, it's about 9 years. So
Wow.
since I Rex credit control, ran a portfolio with no assistant for a while, and then was gradually promoted. So I ended up with one of the biggest portfolios in the Northwest, invoice discounted ABL client, but yeah, just wanted to scratch that itch to do BD, prove that I could do it.
And we've been in touch because we've been in touch recently because you've done quite a bit in the recruitment space over your time in market, and that's sort of how we got introduced a while back. And it's a question I ask most lenders, but Aldermore invoice finance, what percentage of the book, and I'm not going to hold you to it, but just an indication. If you don't know, just tell me you don't know. But is it a big part of invoice finance for Aldermore?
Yeah, so I think recruitment will be a big part in most discounters' book. I don't know what percentage of our book the recruitment represents, but we do our fair share, I suppose is what I say.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's a good corporate answer. You do a bit in it. Brilliant. Let's jump into the questions. You've got two for me. I've got one for you. We're going to talk a bit about the larger side of recruitment business. Well, not the larger, but not the anything. My first question is specifically around recruitment businesses, existing recruitment businesses turning over £5 million and above, really. And it was £5 million recruitment business and above. What should they look out for currently in the market and the current situation if they are looking to move suppliers? So loads of businesses out there turning over more than £5 million, recruitment businesses specifically, loads that will constantly move in and out. Obviously, we've had a slight change to the world recently. Yeah, what would be your couple of tips to those type of businesses considering whether they should make that move at this time, and if they should, what they should look for, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think the current environment is difficult for everybody, and I guess my genuine advice would be, whilst we're in the heart of this pandemic, for corporates in the UK to talk to all their suppliers and customers and try and find the best way forward for them at the moment, and that might mean staying where they are. But if they can't reach a point where they've got an amicable solution, whether it be a supplier finance or a supplier product, then I guess people will be looking for alternatives.
Yeah.
I think, look, clearly price is always an important aspect to a finance facility,
Yeah.
but also flexibility, not just for the day one facility parameters, but what does the covenant structure look like? We've seen a bit of a trend for larger clients of banks implementing quite onerous covenant structures. So yeah, that's certainly something to be aware of. The flexibility, and
we're seeing some of the larger ones look at a credit protection or cover and funding on debtors, especially some of the bigger ones that are sort of highly concentrated to one client. And that's sort of where we're seeing some of these larger businesses that are actively looking in market now, because they can't get the funding on the client, or they can't get the credit, etc. Because obviously the credit insurance market is in a reasonably difficult place, which I think is going to get better. Should you move for credit limit? Should you not move for credit limit? How can you guarantee? It's a conversation that we can have for hours, because you can get a bigger credit limit somewhere else, move, and then the credit limit could be cut, etc. I guess.
Yeah, it's at a point in time, isn't it? And I think in the credit insurance market, it has been in the past non-cancelable cover that's available for credit insurers to provide. But yeah, look, it's a very important point, and the credit insurance market outside of IF is a difficult one. I think the government support for that market will hopefully
absolutely, yeah,
make some change. But I think the number's 10 billion, which I think is around 3% of the market. So quite how much difference it's going to make, I think only time will tell. But it can only be a good thing that there's been support for government and a kind of reinsurance.
absolutely, 100%. And I think from that overall question, it's don't rush and don't make any silly decisions straight away. If you are at that size, do your research. Yes, there might be a better option out there, but also it might be best for you to stay put. And I think that probably, like you said, depends on a business by business basis and whether they're actually sat in the right facility at the right time.
Yeah, but equally, it's also about the relationship model. So we see people move not just for better facility parameters, but sometimes for the benefit of a relationship. So different funders have different models, but certainly our portfolio sizes are small enough that relationship staff have a chance to be out with their clients when we're allowed back out again, but really be a stakeholder and be a partner to that business rather than just being a number on the door. There are some providers who don't operate that way.
So many variables to it, but and I guess it's not a straightforward answer, but yeah, research, look, and really overly think about it. And ask probably people in a similar position to you is probably a good thing to do in this position at the moment if you're thinking about it or you're doubting where you're at the moment. Yeah, I think it probably leads into my second question. 3 top tips. I know you've done it quite a bit before, but to a recruitment business that's using a full back office, encumbered funding facility, the 100% payroll, margin, payments, timesheets back office, that's looking to move into a factoring only, funding only, IF, ID. 3 tips from you, non-COVID related, to a business that's starting to think about that, whether they're looking to do it next month or next year. What would your 3 tips be to someone to do that?
Yeah, no, well, the first thing I'd say is that there's an absolute place for the pay and will product. It's a great product. It's really useful. Helps people who are thinking of starting on their own make that jump. So I think it's a good.
And remove administration, and new start and existing to a certain size. Remove administration from the business and let those direct leaders run that business and bill, as opposed to sort of having that back office function as well.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose the challenge with it is that as costs grow, as the business grows, the costs can become disproportionate, and there is usually a natural tipping point where there's a right time to consider.
I love that word. You said that to me before. Natural tipping point. That's like we have that over the screen when we put this on YouTube. Natural tipping point. Love it. I'll let you carry on. Sorry.
But yeah, so in terms of tips, I'd say that number 1 is make a plan. So don't switch provider without having that clear plan. The pay and bill provides a number of important services. So your invoicing, your payroll, that's your credit control as well. Yeah. So you've not got a plan for replacing those key elements of those non-funding services that come as part of that package, then it's not going to be a successful transition. I suppose following on from that, I suppose tip 2 would be to try and seek some recommendation. If you've got a good plan, but then don't execute that plan properly, it's only going to fall apart. For example, the payroll side, if your new payroll provider doesn't work out for you and you leave your temps not paid, the impact of that can be quite disastrous. So plan and execute. And I suppose my 3rd tip would be think long term. You may have rolled with that pay and bill option longer than some, so you may be at that point where you might not go to a factoring facility where the funding is disclosed and funders doing credit control for you. You might want to look at a CHOCS facility, perhaps where you're doing your own credit control.
Yeah.
Even an invoice discounting facility, and likewise with systems. Systems fit into that. And I would just think long term, because what you don't want to end up doing is moving a facility from pay and bill to an alternate option, and then another 12, 18 months looking to move again. You really want to try and make sure that those switches between funding structures are as infrequent as possible, because the bottom line is recruitment funding should should be a really easy thing for a lender
Absolutely.
to get their head around and do. So there is no real need for you to swap and change if the facility is set up.
What we say a lot of the time is that if you still need the factoring facility, you still need the credit control, take baby steps. So we move the pay and bill to the factoring, and then the factoring provider 9 times out of 10 should provide ID as well, confidential invoice discounting, so you can go from the pay and bill and then use the whole process to follow on from factoring, chocks, ID, and then long term you should be sitting at the right facility. 3 great tips. That's good. We haven't talked about this in depth. That's a good question. Before we jump into the last question, I'm just going to point out that I thought that was a guitar in your background when we first jumped on this call, and when you walked up to it, it was like a little thimble and a tiny little ukulele. So
yeah, it's the lockdown project. So yeah, you're not going to get any notes out of me.
I have asked. I think we get a lot more views if you started singing something, but I won't force you down that route, and I'm sure the marketing department probably won't appreciate representing Aldermore from that side of things. But there you go. It might be good. It might help. So, but we'll jump in. The last question is from you to me. I'll hand it over to you, Tom.
Yeah, no, I suppose my question was, you deal with a variety of lenders, and but my question is a clearing bank always the right place for a funding package? For
a recruitment business, a clearing bank? Absolutely not. Is it always the right place? Absolutely not. Is it a good place? Absolutely. I think, again, this is one of these questions that we could sit back and talk for hours about. I think the clearing banks have a really good place in market. I think there's some really good ones out there that are doing a really great job. I think if the business is very straightforward and textbook, I think it should be sat with a clearing bank, and it should be sat there long term. If it's working there, I think if it's slightly more slightly more quirky, there's slightly things, I think there's different options to look at. Clearing banks do good jobs with quirky deals, but also there's some independents out there, including yourselves, but some large independent-ish. You probably say you're not independent. What would you class yourself as?
Well, we're a bank, but yeah, we're perhaps more independently minded than someone.
Than the clearing banks. Yeah. So people, I guess, see the major clearing banks as it will be the cheapest facility long term. Not always the case. So what I say to people is, yeah, look at market, look at clearing banks, but also look at alternative to clearing banks, because there's quite a few options out there. So it's a simple answer. Is clearing bank always the right place for a deal? And the simple answer is no. Is clearing bank a good place? Yes. Is it always the right place? No. And I think I could probably ramble on about it, but I think that's probably the right answer. I should have just said no right at the start, but it's a good option. We've gone on for a bit. I've probably gone over 10 minutes again. So that's my views. You've probably got similar views. I won't ask you for your views because they'll be slightly biased, because obviously you're not a clearing bank, but I think there's some really good options that aren't clearing bank for people looking at clearing banks.
I think the important thing is that the business and the funder are well matched. There's no point trying to put a square peg in a round hole.
Absolutely.
I'm a big believer of that, whether it's facility size or nature of facility. You've got to be a good fit for each other, and I think it's down to lenders and businesses to be and brokers within that to be upfront with that and try and make sure that the two things go together.
And if the two things go together, the two things stay long term. And the amount of recruitment businesses I talk to that have been with X for 15 years and been with Y for 20 years and maybe paying more than they need to, but they're happy and it works. Why change something that's not broken? And that will always happen. And the aim for us as a business is to find that right facility long term for someone, so they do just sit there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and it works for them. So yeah, square peg, round hole, love it. We also love the little ukulele. So Tom, thanks for joining us. I get this up. I've got the light on today because it's not sunny outside. Maybe it will be when it gets posted. Yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Great. Cheers, Simon.
Yeah, cheers, Tom.